Good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm Father James DeLucio with the Paulist Fathers, and you are tuning in to Luke Live online. This is session number 17, and today I will be presenting Luke's Gospel, chapter 4, verses 31 to 41. Last week, we left Jesus leaving the synagogue in Nazareth. His own native people were rejecting him with a kind of, who do you think you are? And they grew violent. And we looked at a bit of what makes us so violent, what makes us interiorly, if not physically violent, but ready to be filled with anger and go for the jugular in another person. And we looked at it's often when our hearts are not at peace, when we're not so confident in God's love for us that we have to keep proving ourselves to somebody else. The more confident we are that we're here for God's purpose, we're part of Jesus' story, the more we can recognize their people will have opposition to that reality. But the more we cling to it, the more we can grow in confidence, a sense of security and foundation, so that we're not so easily moved to anger and needing to prove things to others. Still, it's a hard lot, and we need a lot of sense of prayer, dialogue like this, conversation and affirmation of the goodness in each other in order to persevere. So from there, Jesus goes back to Capernaum. If you recall, the people of Nazareth saying, show miracles. We've heard you already were doing those in Capernaum. But in Capernaum, they were evidently more receptive. So he returns there as we conclude, almost come to the conclusion of chapter 4. Here we go. Jesus then went down to Capernaum, and he taught on the Sabbath day. And all who heard him were astonished, because he spoke with authority. There was a man in the synagogue who had the spirit of an unclean demon, and he cried out in a loud voice, what have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. And Jesus rebuked him and said, be quiet, come out of the man. The demon threw the man down in front of them and came out of him without doing him any harm. They were all amazed and said to one another, what is there about his word? For with authority and power he commands the unclean demons, and they come out. And news about him spread throughout the surrounding region. He then entered the house of Simon, and Simon's mother-in-law was afflicted with a severe fever, and they interceded with him about her. He stood over the woman, rebuked the fever, and it left her. She got up immediately and waited upon them. At sunset, all who had people afflicted with various diseases brought them to him. He laid his hands on each of them and cured them all. Demons, too, came out of many, shouting, you are the Son of God. But he rebuked them and would not allow them to speak, because they knew he was the Messiah. We have many things to reflect upon with this segment today. The first, of course, as already mentioned, when people are receptive to Jesus and open our hearts, more good things can happen through our participation and through our surrender to the Spirit of Jesus. The next thing, of course, is this whole reality of demons, which, of course, in our modern sensibilities, we find extremely troubling. There's 2 or 3 important points about demons that the scholars tell us. The first is, of course, the ancient people of Jesus' time and long before, and for quite a while after, they didn't have any of the knowledge of medicine and science that we have today. So they knew that anything that caused suffering, and they couldn't explain it, whether it was emotional illnesses, mental diseases, so many different things, it was just considered evil. And they recognized that this kind of suffering, which clearly in many ways is unnecessary suffering, was an affront to God. And what was an affront to God was therefore evil, something in opposition to life, against life. So they had a very wide range of what they considered the demonic. But that doesn't explain everything. Another is the reality that with the Lord's presence on earth, the deep conflict between good and evil, God's will and human willfulness, became manifest even stronger. And so in many of these cases, there literally was a sense of people being possessed by evil, and the corruption that entailed of them personally, and the disruption and corruption of the communities in which they lived. There's always the question, when we find the people possessed by demons and suffering in the scriptures, how is it that the people seem indifferent to them? They're there. So there is a kind of a sense of tolerance. I mean, this man is in the synagogue. I mean, they weren't kicking him out, which is kind of strange too, isn't it? Yet he's there, but there's sort of a sense of more tolerance, perhaps, or they'd been praying over him for years and nothing has happened. So if that's the case, though, there still is a sense of hope. They haven't put him out the way they did the lepers, because they couldn't understand leprosy and they knew how contagious it was. So there's many different layers of things for us to ponder. The difference between tolerance and acceptance, the difference between what's that phrase? We say you can enable people versus you can support them, and the degree to which we can actually ourselves participate in healing and be an instrument of healing. So all these come to the foreground. And then the last, of course, in terms of the demonic, is because it is Jesus. I did say this, that the forces are always in greater conflict, and Luke does use this. As we read through the entire Gospel of Luke, he does show, in a sense, the way John's Gospel does, that there's light and there's darkness, and because of this, and this is why the demons in these stories recognize who Jesus is, because the opposites are so strong. They're at they're ends of the spectrums. Jesus, the fullness of light, they are the fullness of evil, corruption, anti-life, if you will. It's very easy for them, the darkness, to recognize the light. It's so blinding to them. Everybody else, we're trying to figure out and balance, and we're more in a middle gray area. And so it's not always so clear. And then we use our own willfulness to kind of outwill Jesus in terms of lack of fully acceptance of God's presence in the world, not recognizing, as so many people did not recognize, everything that Jesus offered, a true fulfillment of everything that's been promised in all the ages prior to him and leading up to him. And as we looked at a little bit, how Jesus' very being is really what all creation has been working towards, and continues to be inviting humanity to participate in through the ages. I also like the passage when Jesus cures Peter's mother-in-law. First of all, it lets us know what an ordinary fellow Peter is. And there he is, as obviously we'll know later, that he's a fisherman. He has a livelihood. He evidently has a wife if he has a mother-in-law. Just the kind of, this is a savior for everybody, not some special, particular hermits or people who have withdrawn themselves from the world. So that's important. Some people take umbrage with the fact that she's healed and then she has to wait on everybody, and our feminist scholars make quite an issue of it, and rightfully so, because of the implication that, oh, now she's well, she better get to work, to back to the housework. However, there's something different going on here. It's not, at least in the intention of Luke, it's not a male-female thing. It's not about subordination. It's about when we're healed, when we're completely healthy, spiritually, bodily, we're connected to the power of the Spirit that Christ brings us. We're ready to serve others. And that's universal. That's true for everybody. So that's the foundation of that. And then the fact that there's so many healings in the latter part of this chapter, and people are bringing at sunset, which is that just in itself. Why does he tell us it's sunset? The end of the day, people are weary. Their work is finished. They've attended to all the things of the world, and as night draws near, they want to draw near to Jesus. The fear of the darkness to come, another night of sickness, of health, or in this case, again, many demons. So how we're drawn to the light, the season of Advent, the importance of the lighted candles. They symbolize so many things. If you have a chance, you might look at my previous homilies from this week and the week before, to kind of ponder how we really need that symbol of the candles of light as we approach literal darkness with the shorter days, but also try to confront our own demons. And that is another important aspect of the demonic in the scriptures. What are my demons? I still have demons of insecurity. Even knowing what I know, and even asking the Lord for my confidence to come from him. I still can feel very intimidated by people ready to condemn and criticize me, and I can work myself up into a whirlwind. And part of that are my insecurities. So, that's a demon. That's definitely a demon. We all have our own, the demon of I have to have some immediate gratification here because I'm so frustrated, and I'm so this. At least give me something now, and we'll go on buying binges or eating binges or drinking binges, and we know it's not really healthy for us. We need to surrender more. We need to trust more that we're part of God's story, that this life of ours, this life of mine, isn't just about me. And we can get very much caught up in that, like infants and toddlers. It's all about me, which has its positive side, because look, if I'm not me, I'm not being who God invited me to be. And for heaven's sake, we do have to have some sense of personal survival. So, yet, finding that balance. So I have a couple, well, really one song that I like to do, which I'm not going to sing for you, but I'm going to give you the link to my recording, a song called Not While I'm Around. It's to help us recognize that the demons everywhere can be expelled by the power of the Lord Jesus. And the song I chose is interesting because Not While I'm Around is from a musical, what do we call it? Not Gothic, Grand Guignol, dark story, musical theater piece called Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, which is ultimately about a demonic barber who is so consumed with revenge, he ends up ruining the lives of people he had hoped to find and love in the course of his life. But Not While I'm Around is sung by one of the few true innocents in the story, and I just always love the song. Many people love it. It's recorded by many people. Perry Como recorded it. I think Frank Sinatra did as well. Barbra Streisand recorded it. Judy Collins. Anyway, I recorded it too. Why not? And I like to, of course, envision it as part of Jesus' words to us. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful second week of Advent, a beautiful Monday. Be at peace. Know that the Lord is with us, and the demons in our lives can be expelled through Him, with Him, in Him, and encountering Christ in one another. God bless everyone.